What is the greatest comeback to an insult you've ever heard? Joe Pine interviewing Frank Zappa. Joe, I guess your long hair makes you a woman. Frank, I guess your wooden leg makes you a table. During World War I, Switzerland had a tiny standing army, but they were very skilled marksmen. Wilhelm II of Germany asked what 250,000 Swiss troops would do if he decided to invade with 500,000 German troops. The Swiss said, shoot twice and go home. 18th century British radical politician John Wilkes was told in Parliament by a political opponent, "Sir, I do not know whether you will die on the gallows or of the pox." Wilkes shot back with, "That depends, my lord, on whether I embrace your lordship's principles or your mistress." My grandparents used to bicker. My grandmother generally came out on top, as she was fierier. One time, though, she was asking him to do a bunch of stuff, and he muttered, "If you'd lose some weight, you could do it yourself." She fixed her gaze on him and glowered. "I'm thinking of getting rid of about 200 pounds of useless fat immediately." He replied, "You're going to cut off your foot?" Someone yelled out in a Walmart, "I'm not ashamed of who I am." Another voice echoed back, "That's your parents' job." Saw a clip of a stand-up comedian the other day, and he said something along the lines of, "The first time I had sex, it was terrible. The first time I had sex," and a woman chimes in with, "You mean yesterday?" Crowd laughs for a while, and while the comedian is waiting for them to calm down, you can see the gears turn in his head. Once it gets down to basically a few chuckles, he just says, "Glad you remember," and the crowd just lost their shit. It was amazing. I used to work with this 70-year-old woman. She was our supervisor. And one day, one of the ladies who worked with us told this lady to kiss my ass. And the old lady replied, "Where do I start? You're so fat your crack goes all the way up your back." I asked my mother why she always wears makeup despite being in her 40s. She told me she wears makeup so she doesn't look like me. A guy makes fun of his bald friend by rubbing his head and saying, "Wow, your head is as smooth as my wife's bottom." The friend also rubs his head and says, "Wow, you're right." Quiet guy in my art class got called queerbait. He replied with, "If I'm the bait, then you're the catch of the day." One of my coworkers was cold calling customers, trying to get appointments to drum up business. One of them told him to go his hand, and he responded with, "I've got that penciled in for 3. I should be done by 4 if you'd like to come up for an appointment then." The guy laughed his ass off and ended up coming in for the appointment. Winston Churchill, of course. Lady Nancy Astor, "Winston, if you were my husband, I'd poison your tea." Churchill, "Nancy, if I were your husband, I'd drink it." I was the one insulted, but not the one with the comeback. I was out with a coworker and her friends, and my buddy and I were leaving a little too early for her sensibilities. She jokingly got up in my face and said, "Smell that? Smells like puss." A guy playing at the pool table next to us stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry, that must be me. I just ate." It was amazing. Not heard, but read. Easily, the Spartans replied to Philip II of Macedon. As Philip II of Macedon was conquering Greek city-states left and right, Sparta was left alone. Philip had achieved a crushing victory, and Sparta was relatively weak and without walls. Philip sent a message to the Spartans saying, "If I invade Laconia, you will be destroyed, never to rise again." The Spartans replied with one word, "If." My grandma asked my cousin, who'd had lots of partners and 2 kids at this point, if she was ever going to get married. "Cousin, it's not the same nowadays. We don't buy cars without test driving them first." Grandma, "Yeah, but they don't let you put 100,000 miles on them either." Point goes to Granny.